As of right now, some of the most reliable computer models are forecasting a major Arctic blast to build right over the Northeast and Midwest by the time we approach Thanksgiving weekend, which not only could raise the possibility of cooler than average temperatures over those areas, but also could raise the possibility of a major winter storm pattern developing out of this Arctic blast, where the Arctic blast not only makes temperatures cool enough for the precipitation to fall in the form of snowfall, but also could raise the instability over much of the northern United States for a significant winter storm pattern to build. So we're going to take a look at several different computer models such as the GFS and the European model, as well as the North American multi-model ensemble, to determine the chance we're going to see not only an Arctic blast but potentially a snowstorm pattern develop out of this Arctic blast, and determine who will have the most likely shot of receiving cooler than average temperatures as well as a potential snowstorm out of this potential Arctic blast by the time we approach Thanksgiving weekend. As of right now, both the GFS and the European model are forecasting a significant winter storm to develop for Northeast, but when we're talking about a forecast this far out, you need to take it with a huge grain of salt. This is almost a guess at this point. However, we still could forecast general type of weather conditions even in the very long-term future, where we could at least get a general idea of what to expect when it comes to temperatures. And based on what the two most reliable computer models are agreeing on, it seems a little bit more likely by the time we approach Thanksgiving weekend, there will at least be an Arctic blast and the temperatures will be cooler than average. So this significant jet stream dip should move in by the time we approach right around Thanksgiving. We're talking about anywhere between November 25th through November 27th of next week, where we do see in the European model scenario, we have a extratropical low pressure system moving through should I say a mid-latitude low pressure system moving through Canada, which is expected to bring a stronger northwesterly flow to allow the cooler temperatures to move southward, and of course raise the possibility of a significant winter storm pattern developing, where we see in the European model scenario by the time we approach November 30th, we do see a winter storm develop. Now, of course, this is very far out. Don't at all take this seriously just yet for the Northeast and the Midwest. There's still a lot that could change. However, like I said, we could still get a good idea of what's going to happen when it comes to general pattern changes when it comes to temperatures, and both the European model as well as the GFS model are in agreement that by the time we approach the Thanksgiving weekend timeframe, there will be a significant jet stream dip moving through the Midwest of the United States. So this does make it likely that we're going to see a significant Arctic blast by the time we approach the November 30th timeframe. Now, you're probably wondering, what are the chances we'll see a snowstorm out of this? Well, considering the fact that both the GFS and the European model are also agreeing that there's going to be a winter storm developing out of this Arctic blast, we do see a small winter storm develop in a fairly similar area, but it's still a little bit further northward than the European model. It's still gonna be a little bit difficult to really determine if this will exactly be the case, as we're gonna need to see the computer models show a little bit more agreement over the next few runs and really be persistent on that idea that we're gonna see a winter storm before we can jump to that conclusion that there's going to be a winter storm developing out of this Arctic blast. However, I will still say more likely than not, we will at least see some sort of winter storm in the Midwest and the Northeast by the time we approach Thanksgiving weekend. The question remains who exactly it'll impact, and of course that's way too far out to say for certain. At this point, all we know is that there's going to be a decent amount of cold air, there's going to be a stronger amount of instability, and that will raise the possibility of snowfall. So typically speaking, in the areas where you do experience snowfall by the late portion of November, for places such as the extreme northern portions of the Northeast as well as the northern portions of the Midwest, you are of course more likely to receive snowfall out of this, especially by the time we approach the Thanksgiving weekend timeframe, because climatologically speaking, that's simply what happens during the late portion of November. So anytime there's an Arctic blast moving through, chances are you're at least going to see some, more likely than not going to see some snow out of this. But of course, the details are way too far out to say for certain, so stay tuned for more updates as we get a little bit more certainty with the forecast, as computer models still have a lot of days to really iron out the forecast, because of course when it comes to very long-term forecasts, when we're talking about over a week away, that's when the butterfly effect definitely becomes very long. And when it becomes very long, then it becomes even more difficult to forecast, because any small change that's currently, any small difference compared to what the computer models are currently forecasting for, let's say tomorrow, could pretty much snowball into much bigger errors down in the long run, which is why it's very difficult to have reliable forecasts that are very far out, such as over a week out. But like I said, the general forecast is that it's going to be cooler than average, and there is a good possibility of snow by the time we approach Thanksgiving weekend. And if we were to take a look at the MME model as well, the North American multi-model ensemble, we do see that during the month of November, the temperatures are expected to be warmer than average for much of the Midwest, but we do see a pocket where it could be close to average, if not slightly below average, just off the Atlantic coast. So, and if we were to take a look at the weekly model from the CFS model, it does lean a little bit more to the idea that, hey, there's going to be a significant jet stream dip by the time we approach Thanksgiving weekend. So I will say that the chance is likely we're going to see a colder Thanksgiving for much of the northern Midwest, and at least for the late portion of the Thanksgiving weekend and into early December, that should move into the Northeast as well. But more specifically, the cold air should focus in more on the Midwest, so definitely keep that in mind in those areas. Now, you're probably wondering what could potentially bring that snow further southward. Well, of course, we're gonna need to see a jet stream dip that's a little bit further south, that moves a little bit further southward, because there, as of right now, if we were to take a look at the GFS and the European model, the snowfall is mainly relegated to the extreme northern portions of the Midwest and the Northeast. We're gonna need to see that jet stream dip a little bit further southward, and that still has yet to be seen if that'll occur. It'll really depend on the strength of this low pressure, of these next few low pressure systems that move through, because of course, the stronger these low pressure systems are, the more likely we're gonna see that jet stream dip further southward, and that'll weaken the ridging just enough, and overall weaken the jet stream to the point where we're gonna see we're gonna just overall gonna see a jet stream that's a lot further southward, and that would induce the next few low pressure systems to move further southward as well, with a stronger influence of these stronger low pressure systems bringing a stronger northwesterly flow. So definitely keep that in mind in those areas if you want a good idea of whether or not we're going to see potentially a higher chance of snowfall in the areas further southward. Just pay close attention to these next few low pressure systems as they move through. If they end up being a little bit stronger than usual, chances are we're going to be in for potentially a snowier Thanksgiving weekend for the areas further southward. So definitely keep that in mind over the next few days. But as of right now, still a bit too uncertain to say anything specific, but I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days. But that's it for now, guys, and I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more winter season forecast videos, and I hope you guys all have a great day.